Welcome, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and probably all of you already heard the sad news that the mouse is going away, at least from the general tech tree. And we're going to get into all of that in just a minute, but first, while I've got your attention, please subscribe to the channel. You can also like this video for many more great World War II gaming videos and talks and history. I hope you would enjoy it here. So, and also share this video. It really helps. Really helps. Okay. And we're not going to go to battle, but we're going to test drive this thing. And like I say, this is going away from general use. Supposedly, according to the announcement, this is going to become a let's see if we can hit this first shot. Oh, let's go over to 40. Boom, that's just the high explosive. That's why I didn't kill it. Killed it, okay. Going away from, let's see, get the smoke. I don't want the smoke out of my line of vision somewhat here. Okay. Yeah, right. Oh, too low still. Okay. Shooting that. Oh, yeah, tree. Gotta clear the foliage out of the way first. There we go. Still a little low. Right into its stallanium of a gas tank that keeps it from being destroyed when you hit the gas tank. That was only in Stalin's vehicles. Oh, over the top. Wow, this is not doing well. This gun, boom. Try and move more towards the driver / gunner. Oh well. Let's go with the engine compartment. Okay, another fire. Well, let's go with the hope. No wonder. Okay, bye. Well, this has a slow reload, of course. It's a two-part ammunition, is why it is slow. You're loading both the round and then the case behind it. Boom. See, now that is a one-shot, one kill for most of those. So many of you who have not ground their way up to the mouse will not have a reasonable chance to get it. Boom, right into the side of the turret. I still didn't take that out. Waiting, loading. There we go. Okay. Now, see part of what I have some of the gear on in the vehicle just to show the sheer size of it. Look at the jerry cans. All right. Well, we're going to return to hangar. Now, the good news is, if you've even started researching the Panther II, the Flakpanzer, basically the Flakpanzer, the mouse, or the 105mm target, according to the information we have, if you just have one research point into it, you'll eventually get to be able to fully research it and keep the vehicles. They have supposedly said that this is going to become a rare event vehicle, so you'll have some chances to earn it up. Now, let's see if we can get this to work right. Okay, yes, you'll know. Yes, the screen is a bit smaller, but or black areas, but we're going to live with that. And we can see what's going away here, what's going to replace it, and I think some of the reasons for all of this is dealing with what Gaijin has done with other vehicles, including, which we're not seeing here, adding in various Cold War vehicles, particularly infantry fighting vehicles, if you will, that have a tank killing capability, like a BMP or similar vehicles. And I rarely have played the mouse, and my mouse isn't nearly fully ground up because I keep getting stuck in with much later vehicles. One solution to many of these problems, just one solution, would be to have a big, bright, clear line between World War II tanks and, let's call it, Cold War tanks. So you have, like I say, a bright, clear line for matchups. Maybe not make it so you have to grind all the way through World War II to be able to get into Cold War era vehicles. And I fully understand that this is a free-to-play game, and they've got to have ways to encourage you to spend money on their game. And so, yeah, make it so you have to grind part of the way up, and make some paths, including, like, hey, I don't know, spend $20 and jump straight to Cold War vehicles or something as a starting lineup for any nation. And there would be some vehicles that would be in both sets of trees, the World War II tree, the Cold War tree. Something like the Centurion. That makes it in the latter days of World War II. Actually, I do believe makes it into combat. I know it gets fielded to Europe for the British. And it serves throughout the Cold War as frontline tanks for nations like South Africa, and it's still serving in South Africa, actually, as a highly modified, reworked over vehicle. But they're still around, and not just, in some reserve yard somewhere, but still being used. And you can easily dump a version of the Panther into the sort of starting lineup for the French Cold War vehicles, because they're the only real sort of nation that keeps the Panther properly in service throughout, or in the early days of the Cold War, not throughout, of course, but so you can have some vehicles that would be in both sets of trees, but they would be essentially the same vehicle, unless you can go, oh well, hey, new ammo's come out a couple of years later. But let's look at, so that would be my solution, is have a World War II trees and a Cold War tree, and separate those out. I really love playing World War II tanks, and I like a whole lot playing. I really liked recently, they had a Korean War matchup set up, and I played a bit of that, and I like that. So if done right, that could be good. Now, they are wanting to remove the Flakpanzer 341. And part of their reasoning, they say, for all this is getting rid of, I don't know, paper tanks, fantasy tanks. Okay, I understand. And why do you get rid of those? Well, one is, well, we might not know if they would have actually built them. Two, we don't necessarily know what their capabilities would have been. Because when somebody is first out on the drawing board or on a napkin drawing up an idea for a tank, and by what it actually end up being produced, we can see this in many produced, and this video is going to go longer than I anticipated, I can tell already. And what ends up getting produced can be significantly different along the stages for various reasons. But we do have some evidence for the Panther flak vehicle, and here is a photo, a World War II photo of one of them, or the one of them, probably, most likely. And it set a warning to go to full screen here. And here's another photo of it, same guy standing out in front of it. Now, I think, and I want to clearly state that I think the turret here is purely a mock-up, you know, made out of wood or something. It does not look, I mean, the barrel, you look at the flash hiders on the, you know, the flat guns. It looks completely, you know, they're filled in. And so I don't think that's a functional turret at all. I do, looking there, it does look like the barrels could, you know, move up to sort of show its range of motion. So we have a fair amount of evidence that this vehicle was likely to be built. Okay. Now this is what I, you know, they're an old sort of documentary or pseudo documentary called Luftwaffe 1942 that looks into a lot of the prototypes and drawing board type aircraft in, or not 42, 46, Luftwaffe 46. Looks, you know, the sort of what ifs and what was either, you know, in development for the Luftwaffe. Well, I look at this as sort of a 46 tank that may have come out in 45. So if Germany's doing well in 45, you know, they've beaten off the D-Day landings, they're still holding down in Italy, and they're still holding on the more or less eastern border of Poland kind of thing. Yeah, I think they would have produced this just because they're wanting to get rid of production of the Panzer IV. And so something like this, would it have turned out to look just like this? I don't know. But this is a serious consideration and the best likelihood of this vehicle. So we have very real evidence for this vehicle as a potential of existing. But like, I will firmly agree that this is purely a mock-up turret on a Panther IV hull. Now, I want to come down here and we can see the vehicles that they are going to remove. We'll talk about each of these. They want to do the Ostwind II. I have these two books, and these are sort of my Bibles for, and I would highly recommend them, and you can get them. Oh, what are we doing now? I want to reduce that down so that we can see both of these. This isn't the order I anticipated doing these. This is Weapons of the Third Reich. Thank you, bus or whatever driving by. And this book covers, or purports to cover, every single non-self-propelled weapon of the Third Reich, from pistol to the biggest railway guns. And the way it functioned, and both of these are fairly old now, but the way the book functions was everything the Germans gave a designation to. And so it includes things like the M1 Garand, because the Germans gave a designation to captured M1 Garands. They never produced them, but they also, you know, talk a lot about, you know, weapons that they got in large numbers, you know, captured French, captured Polish Mausers and whatnot. You know, everything that they captured and the Germans gave a designation to. Everything that was at least out of prototype, at least adopted to some degree by the Germans, and there is reasons for this. So this covers everything that doesn't move on its own. This covers everything that moves on its own, that the Germans gave a designation to. So they briefly cover some of the captured vehicles and some of the modifications to captured vehicles, the heavy emphasis being on French captured vehicles. And so this is sort of my working sources for a lot of the information based on this, and then I've used Google and other things to find pictures of it. And so they do have a and it says in the book that late 44, a few of these were deployed into 45. This is the double mounted 37 millimeter flak gun that Germany did produce. And so we're talking about the Ostwind II in the game, this guy here. And notice the parallel barrels that I've noticed. And this is sort of one of the reasons, one of the things that's prompting me to make this video. This is what was produced during World War II. Now, in fairly low numbers, was thought to be highly effective and probably would have gone into wider scale production. Now you can see the people standing around there being prepared to load the gun, handle the ammunition to keep both barrels rapidly firing. And it takes a fair amount of space to do so, to handle all of that. And that's an important thing here. Now, we can see here a photo with a Wirbelwind, a mobile wagon. I think that is the 37mm version. It's sort of a smallish picture. Yeah, the 37mm version of it. Basically a Panzer IV with the turret removed and the metal sides that fold down. Little surprised that that was the main version of it. They also did a Flakpanzer limited version of it. And then the Ostwind there. Note that the Ostwind has a much sharper turret on it than the Wirbelwind. We can see them all in one photo. I sort of thought that was useful. And here we can see how cramped this turret is, with the people in it trying to load and shoot one of these, and we've got the backdrop of the Wirbelwind as well. And yes, I'm sure my German pronunciation is wrong on most of these. Now, here is a model that somebody's created of what they think an Ostwind II would be. And you see it's the superimposed guns on top of each other with a unpainted, just a primered, that's the primer color under supposedly all the German armor. You know, so this is sort of like a test version of the vehicle. I don't know how well you're fitting in the crew for reloading, but to me it makes more sense than this. I don't have a good shot with this sitting next to the Wirbelwind to see how much wider the turret is, but I believe it could be a bit wider. So if we're talking, we don't want fantasy weapons. We don't want drawing board weapons. Well, I could not find evidence of this thing, parallel barrels, existing in a period photo. Now, maybe it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just said I couldn't find it. I did not spend a lot of time looking for it, but I could not find it. So to me, this is even more of a fantasy vehicle than the Panther anti-air gun. Now, they did have the Kugelblitz, which they, I think, again, sort of just made prototypes of it. I could have looked that up, which is a fully armored turret on a Panzer IV type hull that supposedly was rather good. Now, if you didn't know, they did produce a few, I think like 3 Ostwinds and a prototype, and one prototype Ostwind and 3 Ostwinds were produced. None of the rest were produced. Or that was it for production. Now, I say that there were more of them than that. What, like most all, outside of I think the prototype, most all of the Wirbelwinds, and numbers vary. I think we're talking maximum 180 Wirbelwinds. Those are excuse me, those were all vehicles that were damaged Panzer IVs of one model or another, and supposedly the Canadian example 1 of 2 that is still in existence has hull components or top deck components from one model of Panzer IV and the main sort of lower hull or whatever. I'm not talking anything about the turret. I'm talking about the lower portion of the vehicle from a different one, different models, different serial numbers that they put together. So all one level of damage or another for the Wirbelwinds taken back to one factory or another. and put together for a functioning vehicle that's a flak gun vehicle. So could they have produced a parallel prototype? Maybe. But I really think since you already have a functioning gun mount that they like, they probably would have done superimposed barrels on them. So, I'm not against the idea of this being in the tree, not at all. I just would go with the superimposed vehicles. Now, the other thing they're removing, and I don't know if it's going to, come back as a premium or a event vehicle or not, just don't know, is the Panther II. Again, the charge of this is that it is a paper tank. Or maybe, and I haven't read all of this, I just watched Fly Daly's video and quickly scanned some of this. More than draws upon many historical Panther projects and developments, such as the Panther II chassis that was built, but also armed with advanced, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the turret, incorporating plans to mount an 88 several layers technology. Okay, yes. And so this here is something that didn't get into production. They're very right about this. But we see the known weaknesses, both especially in the early Model D Panther I tanks, but continuing later, transmission problems and other mechanical problems to the vehicle. And the reason they have that sort of skirt on it there is that the armor lower hull side is very light. And so they knew there was a bunch of difficulties with the Panther. Now, again, if we're presuming that Germany is doing okay, the factories haven't all been bombed out. The Allies or the Soviets have not been occupying factories and they're still able to produce things. I think they would have gone in the, here is a Panther II. Now, it has an earlier, not a Panther II hull or a turret, but it's a Panther II hull on it. This is in the Patton Museum, I think. Fort Knox, maybe? I don't know. Maybe it's moved. I thought it was in the Patton Museum, but I could be mistaken. Because I'm thinking of the one in California, but I'm not sure. So this is a Panther II hull. We know what it was. They built one. Would they have put that into serial production? I think quite likely. As to the turret, I think this is in the either, and I don't know, the Schumont turret. I don't know if this is in the Panzer Museum in Munster or the looking at that with the British tank makes me think that it's in the Bovington Museum. I think Bovington Museum. Someone can helpfully comment below on any of these topics, and anything you think I'm getting wrong, please do comment. And you can, of course, read the comments and see my answers to them for more additional information. So we have a pretty good idea of what this turret was, as in how thick was the armor, We do know from some evidence that very late war, like Panther turret armors, weren't very good, the quality of steel. And so, we can look at what the actual quality of steel versus what the height of, premier time of the war would have been. Thank you, loud car or motorcycle or whatever that was. So, but we do know what the turret, because they were building this turret, and so put these two things together. Now, I kept War Thunder here open, and I'm going to go back to my game display. So you're going to briefly do black, and then we're here. Okay, so here is the Panther II, and one of the things we can see down here, as you can look at, let's zoom out a little bit here, is we can go over to this side maybe. Just look at the road wheels down here, and then look at the road wheels here. This is sort of the Panther road wheels. These are much more based on the Tiger road wheels. So we can see that they've done and that was one of the things to build ease of production, use for both field maintenance as well as production simplification, that would be a good term, is that you're making one type of road wheels for the vehicle. We can see here on the armor, 100 millimeter thickness. I don't know what the one hole was historically, and we can see here 80 millimeters, but I'm presuming that this is right. So we have a good idea of what this vehicle was. My understanding, those infrared things mounted on top were mounted on multiple vehicles, not just on, back at the earlier Panthers even. I remember reading about one battle, night battle, where the Germans came in with infrared lamps and the night vision stuff and attacked. I think it was before the Ardennes offensive. I can't be absolutely sure on that. So though the night vision is something that was used on production vehicles, and not just a fantasy thing. We know the Germans were the most advanced night vision fighting capabilities of the war. They had similar things that would mount under Sturmgewehr, the assault rifle. So yeah, I think this is a reasonable tank to have in the game, from the idea that both the turret and the hull were produced. The gun was produced. So looking forward to a late 45, mid to late 45, or definitely by early 46, we could see these vehicles in reasonable production, reasonable use. Let me look at my notes here. Okay, yeah. The other sort of thing that they're removing, which we sort of started with, is the mouse. I've somewhat stopped grinding this up. Not that I don't like this vehicle, but I don't want to play it against being up-tiered, or even a lot of other 8.0s and up-tiered to 9.0s, modern stabilized gun vehicles that have very good, at least frontal protection, and guns readily able to penetrate anything on this vehicle. So it makes me not want to play this. And along with... I haven't even gotten parts on the Panther II. I've never played this. I only brought this in just to show. And I have played this. Done okay. Playing anti-aircraft gunner at some of the somewhat higher tiers. But so, so this is not that hard to figure out of a vehicle, of what it would have been. But back to the mouse. I think only 2 of them achieved combat, or achieved operations in combat. And let me switch back to here. Right, and so because we have some photographic evidence. Wow, I got everything but that. It looks like everything but that in the right folder before starting this. Sorry, guys. Okay, maybe I didn't. Thought I had a picture of 2 mouses out in the field next to each other. Oh no, it's this one. Okay, so here we see 2 camouflaged up what looks to be mouses. That one's clearly a mouse. I'm pretty sure that one is too. Just it's not a very clear photo. And this one appears to have achieved combat and destroyed. Soviet officer there for sure, so I'm presuming that's a Soviet soldier there. I don't know if that's the one that's still in existence, if that's what they brought back. Probably is. And so this is, well, I don't know if 2 equals production, but this is definitely a vehicle that is built. So again, we know what these vehicles were. We know that they were pushing forward into production on the mouse. This isn't just a drawing board tank. You know, we got two into combat. There may have been some more holes in development. And here is a surviving one. We have that this is from the Russian Museum, I think somewhat near Moscow. I'd love to go there someday. And so whether that's the one that we just saw pictured blown apart and they've somehow put part of it back together or whatnot, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've seen, I presume, this vehicle in a photo of a bunch of captured vehicles in Moscow just after the war, you know, as trophy vehicles. Now, this is taken inside that mouse, my understanding, what it looks like inside now. Another inside shot. So we have some reasonably good data for this vehicle. I notice whoever's leaving a bottle around. How interesting. And I think this is the driver's compartment. We can zoom in on this. Not that it's just not going to be blurry, but we can see 2 seats here. The driver's forward compartment, some of the engine compartment. I think this is a World War II period photo of this. Don't know why there's 2 seats up there. Just not sure. And this back here is the engine. So the driver section and the rest of the mouse are in 2 separate areas. So we have fairly good information on the mouse. So this isn't like, again, somebody's drawing up on a napkin. Well, wouldn't it be great, Hitler, if we, or Hitler's drawing up and saying, we must have a light tank that looks like this. It's a mouse, it's a light tank. We're also going to build really heavy tanks. Now, Hitler was big into oversized weapons, generally speaking. So, again, we know what this vehicle was to a level that's good enough for a game. And again, even they sort of agree. Now, they state that they want to make these a bit more rare instead of common to better model it on the battlefield. Well, I would also like to see a points system arranged for the game, whether it's points per side or points per player. And so like a mouse, I don't know, would be 100 points, 1,000 points or whatever, and like you'd get one mouse. Or you could get, say, whatever ranking, 3 Panthers, or sort of balancing numbers versus effectiveness of the tank balanced out, because the mouse is really interesting to play it along with other members of Team Gamer. Sometimes we'll set up custom battles, and often just even number of sides, but a few times it's either just myself driving the mouse, or having one other guy to support me against 6 or 8 other players. And this mouse, even unground up, is a very hard weapon to kill if I keep the enemies down at 4.0 or something and below. Can even kill an Italian CV-33 by literally driving over it. I drove over one and got on top of it, and it killed the little Italian tank by driving over the top of it with the mouse. It's on video somewhere. So so the idea of a lot against a few, this makes perfect sense. And so again, in the random battles, it might be sort of hard to do. But if you're looking at late World War II high tier vehicles, so you're facing off against some Centurions or some of the JS2s or JS3s, that sort of, again, 1945, 1946 gray area between the Cold War and World War II. So in that sense, I think it should be in the game. but that would fix it. Okay, now the Tiger II 105. This one, I will be quite honest with you, I am not that displeased. Now, just as a disclaimer, I have all of, as you saw, all of these vehicles, and again, if you even have one research point in each one of these vehicles, obviously you have to get the, I guess it's the Tiger II before you can get the Tiger II 105, before you can get the mouse. But if you've just started the research on any of these vehicles, you're supposedly being able to complete the research and keep them. So do so if you wish to do so, and you can. But this to me was always, what the hell is this in the game? Again, I've been using my sources here, and that's not in this book. Now, this book, notice it does say the revised edition, which is what I have. Used photos of the editions that I have of the book. Doesn't mean that the book isn't wrong. The book can be wrong. Books can be wrong. But so I've never, before encountering War Thunder, ever heard that there was even a thought of this 105 tank. Now, my understanding, and I have not fully read this, is that they did build a 105 test gun. Access History Forum, I would highly recommend it. It has a lot of very good historical information on it. It is a non-political forum. And so if you want to look up stuff on things, it often comes from here. If you're looking for original source material, and we have some original source material. Some of you can maybe read the German better than I can and read about this. I gather this is a line drawing of the gun. We can see here, they're calling it a 100 or 10 centimeter. I think that's the round that they're referring to, because here's the 128 and there's the 88 next to it with some data charts. And so we can see them, they're talking more on the subject. So a gun of that type supposedly did exist. Okay. I still wouldn't have built it. I still wouldn't have put it in the game. So I am, I'm happy that I have it, and as I could show you, I have not even equipped it before this time, so I have not even started grinding up parts on it, because I really want to play World War II vehicles and not, but okay, I don't have major heartburn that it's there. I just have little interest in it, and maybe it's good that it's there if you're playing against, 1950s vehicles that are, have come out, and you need a heavy tank that can actually function, deal with a heavy tank. And that's part of this situation is weight versus engine power, so speed and maneuverability. What was a heavy tank in weight in World War II is now just a main battle tank, but they move like what medium tanks in World War II would have moved like on the battlefield. So, and the round effectiveness has greatly increased. So that's what makes World War II and post-war or Cold War era tanks considerably different, and I wouldn't mix them like they do. So yeah, so old tree, new tree. I'm interested definitely getting the Ostwind II, but I think they're modeling it wrong. I don't know if you want to poke them on doing it right. I presume they've, again, I don't know what, I could not find a period historical evidence of a side-by-side, and so we don't have a thing to go over to. The Germans were also playing around with a instead of a 37, a 30 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. I don't know if this is supposed to be the 30 millimeter gun, side by side, like from the Kubel Blitz or something like that. I don't know, but I would presume the Ostwind II would have been a superimposed one of these, because they had these already there and functioning, and with most of the Whirlwinds and most of the Ostwinds were repurposed damaged vehicles. You know, it's so much easier to take an in-production mount that they're only doing limited production at the time at the end of the war anyways, but take a in-production mount, create a new sort of hollow shell turret here that fits on the turret ring, and basically you're just setting up seats and ammo racks that are around it, to hold the ammo. I presume some way to pass ammo from down in the hole up to the guys up at the top. Maybe the machine gun operator here. I also wish they'd have the machine gun function on the Whirlwind and this thing. That I know it wouldn't be a good anti-aircraft machine gun, but still, it'd be nice to see it functioning on the Whirlwind and Ostwind. So yeah, we're looking at that, and I think they should do it something that makes more historical sense, unless they can show. It's like the olden days when I was in school, you had to show your work. You couldn't just give the right answer. You had to show how you got there. If they could show how they get to the Ostwind II that they're doing, I would be more amenable to having it there. Okay, well, I've talked on long enough on this and the details. If you have any questions, please post them below. If you have comments, corrections, also post them below. If you've made it this far and you still haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please like the videos. Please share it with others so that we can get this out and hopefully affect Guy Jean's development of War Thunder ground vehicles in the German tree. I know that concerns very many people. I think it is the most popular tree to be played. Probably the second would be the Soviets, but I think German is the most popular. And thanks for watching. See you next time for more historical gaming videos.